Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world. And so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I'm doing very well, thank you very much. And I'm so very glad you've joined me for the story tonight. This is part 2 of our story. So if you haven't heard part 1, click on the description and you'll get to it because you want to listen to the whole story. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story, or rather, let's continue with our previous story. I hurriedly dash up to the young woman, peering down at her mangled body in abject horror. It's not a pretty sight. She's dead, isn't she? I say. The figure in the heavy winter coat looks up at me. To my astonishment, I find myself looking into the noble face of a Bigfoot, who has the kind of face you would expect to see in an indigenous Indian warrior. High cheekbones, hooded deep-set dark eyes, a pronounced forehead. The creature is so human, it's almost uncanny. I never knew Bigfoots would be this human. In truth, I never knew Bigfoots actually existed, until now. And this revelation has stung my perceptions of the world very hard indeed. The creature is looking at me, squatting on these tree-trunk-sized thighs that look like powerful, heavy-duty nutcrackers. I'm so astonished, I do a double take. I can't believe what I'm actually beholding. And for a moment I think I really must be dreaming. But there is no doubt in my mind. This Delphic creature is real. The Bigfoot looks up into my eyes. Our eyes lock for a moment. I notice his soulful eyes are dark, the colour of treacle. They have a yellow eye shine. They're filled with a melancholia that I can tangibly feel. I hear the audible words in my head. I tried to stop her. I tried. But she wanted it to be over, like you do. You should not treat your life with so little regard. It's a gift. You would do well to remember that. You spoke to me in my head. You spoke to me in my head, I repeat. I don't understand how you do that. I heard your voice in my head. You spoke English to me, and you didn't even open your mouth. How does that even happen? I'm completely floored by this peculiar method of communication, but let's just say I'm in no doubt that the creature spoke to me. The Bigfoot is looking at me through amused eyes, as if he finds my astonishment highly comical. I lean over the dead corpse of the young woman to inspect her more closely. She's gone, I hear the voice saying in my head again. There is nothing we can do now. She was determined to go. I tried to stop her 3 times, but this time I couldn't get to her in time. The Bigfoot rises to his feet from his squatting position, unfolding himself from the ground like a mighty beach umbrella, and I'm astonished by the sheer size of him. I notice he's easily 8 foot tall, possibly more, 700 to 800 pounds, and built like a powerful army tank. He is way more sturdy and robust than the truck that I've been driving. He's covered in long flowing hair that was a little tangled, as there were a few thorny briars attached to it, and a plethora of field grass. But I will confess, he didn't smell at all. If he did, it was so benign and so inoffensive, I couldn't smell a thing. The creature audibly sighs. He scratches his head, and I see genuine sorrow in his eyes as he takes one last look at the deceased young woman and then nods at me. I once again hear the words in my head. I will leave her to your charge. I watch in awe as he glides away. I tremble as I call the emergency services. There are ambulance and police sirens everywhere, including the coroner, whom I'm surprised arrives on the scene at this time of night to inspect the body. She's wearing plastic clothes, and the area has been cordoned off with tape. It is clear no trucks will be able to use this pass for the moment. Any vehicles will be redirected, but luckily there's no traffic around, apart from emergency vehicles, as most people would have more sense than to drive on a treacherous pass at this time of night. This was an instant death, Officer Balotelli, she's saying. The young lady wouldn't have known a thing. She was here 1 second, gone the next. It was lights out for her at once.
Would she have suffered, ma'am?
Absolutely not. I doubt she felt a single thing. The officer I saw speaking to the coroner observes me standing beside my damaged truck, and he ambles towards me hurriedly.
Are you Marcus Fielding, the man who called emergency services?
Yes, sir, that's me.
I'm Officer Ian Balotelli. I wish we could have met under better circumstances. Dreadful scene of carnage, is it not? You never get over accidents like this. Awful waste of a life. This place is notorious for fatal accidents, I'm afraid. Can you tell me exactly what happened here, sir? You were saying on your call that she ran at your car. Is that right? It was very bizarre, officer. I was driving around that sharp corner, going faster than I should have been. But even if I had been going at a slower speed, I confess I would have never been able to stop for the woman in time. It seemed that without question, she was running at me. I honestly don't know why. She was trying to commit suicide, says Officer Balotelli. 5 minutes before your call, we had a very intriguing phone call, I have to say. It was from a man claiming he'd been driving around exactly the same stretch of road as you. It was about 25 minutes ago, with that sharp curb over there, near the sheer drop, and he saw a young woman flying towards his car, almost begging to be run over. He reported a monstrously big man, wearing a Bigfoot costume, with a very human face, lunging towards her, throwing her on his arms, and out of the way in the nick of time. Saved her life, he did, I gather. He described the man as masterfully acrobatic. Looked like someone who could perform in a circus. He was so adroit, so agile, so flexible, I gather. The driver was very shook up, I have to say. Had a dreadful shock. Was actually in tears on the phone. He explained that the girl was furious to be rescued and was lashing out at the man wearing the Bigfoot suit. All I can say is the mind boggles. People never cease to amaze me. He must have been suffocating wearing a costume like that. Although how he managed to look 8 foot tall is beyond me. They can do incredible things these days with costumes, I believe. It's amazing what they can do these days. How do you know it wasn't the real deal? I asked the officer. The Bigfoot, I mean. How do you know that the creature was not a real Bigfoot? Are you kidding me, sir? Says the officer. Please, do I look like an idiot? I was not born yesterday. Funny enough, that's exactly what the driver said to me. He said that the Bigfoot was real. He was certain of that. He could see the muscles beneath the skin. He told me that the Bigfoot was huge, but I persuaded him to see common sense. All I can say is it must have been a man, wearing a jolly good suit. They make excellent costumes at Universal Studios these days. Everybody knows that Bigfoot is just folklore. The creature is just fictitious. Most people who claim to have seen the creature have rarely only encountered bears. It's amazing how suggestive the imagination can be. Anyway, getting back to this rather bewildering story. The man, having nearly run over the young woman, was in a dreadful state of shock. He was telling me he was shaking like a leaf. He got out of the truck to see what was going on. He told me he was frightened because of the Bigfoot he'd seen. He perceived it could potentially be a dangerous creature, so he left the truck with a firearm in his hand. He thought that the woman might have been frightened off by the Bigfoot and run directly in the road to escape him. But it did not explain why the woman was running at him in the way she had been. Instead, he discovered the woman shouting at the man in the Bigfoot suit. "Why don't you leave me the hell alone? If I want to kill myself, it's my business. It's got nothing to do with you. You can do nothing to stop me. Why do you keep on rescuing me all the time? Leave me the hell alone. And stop telling me my life is a gift. My life is not a bloody gift. It's a noose around my neck. And I've had enough. I want out now. Go away. Go away. Leave me alone." It was then that the witness reported that the woman was obviously suicidal. But he only managed to call us a couple of minutes before you called us. He was unable to calm down from the shock of the bizarre event. He couldn't make sense of any of it. It was very peculiar to him, the whole thing. Let's just say if the man had managed to compose himself and phoned a little earlier, maybe we would have arrived on the scene in time and taken the young woman into psychiatric care. But it was not to be. Suffice to say, I do not know, of course, the mystery identity of the man wearing the Bigfoot suit. He was quite a hero by all accounts. But I ask you, wearing a Bigfoot suit in sweltering conditions like this is insanely ridiculous. I don't know what he was thinking. I imagine he was hiding at the side of the road, hoping to show himself to any vehicles that go past at night, so people will say they've seen a Bigfoot. But he chose a crazy location, and not many trucks drive here at night. Needless to say, I am always surprised what people will do for attention. It boggles my mind, let me tell you. I saw the creature too, sir, when I pulled over. It was definitely not a man in a costume. He was real. I saw him up close. Oh, please, laughed the officer. Don't you give me that nonsense. Not you as well. The young woman was talking to the man in the suit. I very much doubt she would talk to a real Bigfoot. As I keep telling you, it must have been one hell of an impressive suit. I know you've had a dreadful shock, sir. I can't imagine what you've been through right now. Running over a young woman is not something one can easily get over. I can recommend a great counsellor for you, who knows how to deal with victims of trauma. Your truck is going to be examined by forensics. It's our normal procedure here. And when you've received the all clear, we will organise for it to be cleaned and repaired for you. The front end of your vehicle has taken a rather nasty beating, I see. You must give my officer your insurance details. We have to establish this is a suicide first, but based on the previous witness and your account, it sounds like this is definitely the case. Of course, we need to inform the next of kin. Find out who this mystery woman actually is. There may, of course, be an inquest. Who knows? In the meantime, I will take your details and keep you posted. You might need to come into the station to make a statement. I'll get Malcolm to take you back home. Malcolm's one of my officers. You'll be needing a lift.
Moments later, I'm sitting on the leather seats of Malcolm's truck. The police officer who's taking me back home. He was a garrulous character. I could understand why he'd become engaged in the police, as I could see he loved drama of every kind. His eyes were literally animated, as if everything that had transpired, as macabre as it was, beheld for him a great intrigue. He found this aspect of the job quite exciting, I could see.
Do you mind me asking you, sir, why you would drive that route at night? He asks me. It's so dangerous. You could end up veering off that sheer drop, you know. And then it's over cadovers for you. Personally, I wouldn't willingly choose to drive there at night. It's bad enough during the day, let me tell you. I only ever come here when we're on duty. That's when I have to drive to this spot. And over the years, there's been a lot of fortuitous deaths over there.
I imagine it is dangerous, I say, but I'm a good driver.
I'm a good driver as well, but I still wouldn't risk it. Why would you drive there at night, if you don't mind me asking? Where were you going?
I just wanted to take a drive. Bad day at work, you know. Couldn't get any sleep.
You know the scenario.
The officer looks at me befuddled.
With the greatest of respect, sir, you could take a drive without engaging any element of risk. Driving on a road on a mountainous elevation like that, with a lethal drop, is asking for trouble, especially when there's poor visibility up there. One wrong turn, and you're in grievous trouble. Why on earth would you choose such a treacherous spot to drive at such an ungodly hour of the night when you can't see a thing? If I didn't know better, I'd say you were like that poor girl. You had a suicide wish of some kind. Either that, or you were looking out for a ghost. The area is reputed to being haunted. We get lots of giggling teenagers going up there, hoping to spot something outer-worldly. Oh no, officer, none of the above, I assure you, I lied. I just liked the views from up there. I wanted to enjoy a drive. I understand, sir. But to be fair to you, you're not going to see many views at night. Look out of your window now. What do you see? Nothing much, officer. You're absolutely right. I don't know what I was thinking. Believe it or not, sir, those are words I hear again and again on the force. I don't know what I was thinking, officer. He pauses for a moment, clears his throat and says, So tell me, sir, are you going to be all right? Seeing that poor woman running at your car tonight is not something you easily get over. It must have been brutal for you. Rarely brutal. I worry about people like yourself witnessing such dreadful carnage. In the force, we're conditioned to have stomachs of iron. It goes with the territory of being a police officer. But for you lot, it's not easy. I do strongly encourage you to seek counselling. It'll be a very good idea if you did. I think I'll be all right. I say, I'm still in shock. I gather there was a man wearing a Bigfoot costume who rescued the young woman the first time she ran into the road to attempt suicide. I mean, I ask you, why would anyone wear a Bigfoot costume in sweltering conditions like this? What's wrong with people? That's the thing about being in the police force. People do and say the strangest things to get attention. We see it all the time. We had a case recently of a man wearing a Batman suit on Route 823. He was standing in the middle of the road, waving at the cars, with a huge grin on his face. He was seeing himself as some kind of superhero. He was lucky he didn't get mown down by the cars. He said he did it because he wanted people to see that Batman was real. He actually believed he was Batman. Can you believe it? You're kidding, I gasp. No, I'm not, he chuckles. Then there was a case when a woman phoned emergency services. Her kid was standing on the edge of the roof of her home on his birthday after having received his Superman costume. The kid had intended to jump, believing he was going to take off in flight like Superman. I suppose you could say he had a good imagination, but that wasn't going to get him very far in life if he jumped off that roof. Wow, you must see some things in your line of work. That is certainly a shocker. Don't get me started. I've seen it all, believe me. Drugs and alcohol are the worst. They make people do nonsensical things, I can tell you. As the police officer drives down our drive, I can see the curtains of the upstairs window of our house twitching. I know it's my wife. Moments later, the front door is flung open. My wife races down the driveway towards us. She looks livid. Your wife, says the officer, chuckling. She looks like she's got a bone to pick with you. Or an axe to grind, more like it. Put it this way, I've seen angry women in my time, but your wife looks about as heated as you can get. She could even fry eggs on the pavement tonight, with the heat she's generating, along with this heat wave. I reluctantly open the passenger side door of the officer's truck and climb out, to be greeted by my wife's irate face, which has grown an ashen shade. She looks absolutely furious. Where the hell have you been? I've been worried sick. Where is your truck? What are you doing in a policeman's truck, for goodness sake? I got up in the middle of the night, wondering where the hell you'd gone. I climbed out of bed and discovered not only was your truck not parked in the downstairs garage, but you were nowhere to be seen. Nowhere. I searched everywhere. What do you mean by going off in the middle of the night like this, without even telling me where you're going? Don't I have a right to know what you get up to? Or have you conveniently forgotten that I'm actually your wife? Don't be too hard on him, ma'am, says the officer, who has climbed out of the driver's side door, looking at the drama between me and my wife unfold. Your husband had a hell of a night tonight. He's been in a dreadful accident. A young woman was tragically killed, thrown up into the air by the wheel of your husband's truck. Died on impact. Very tragic state of affairs. Your husband is in quite a state. Oh, my God, says my wife, gasping as she cups her hand over her mouth in horror. You ran over a young woman tonight? You actually killed someone? I can't believe this. How could you do that? What the hell were you thinking? Oh, my God. I can't believe this is happening. This is a nightmare. It house in the middle of the night to go for a spin in your truck. But killing someone, that just takes the biscuit. Is this some kind of a sick joke? Because if it is, I'm not laughing. Do I look like I'm laughing? Please, please tell me this is a joke. I need to know this is a joke, because if it isn't... Calm down, madam. It's not as bad as you think it is. Not as bad as I think, officer. Not as bad as I think. From where I'm standing, things couldn't get worse than this. You tell me my husband has run over a woman, killed her, and it's not as bad as I think. I don't think it could get worse than this. Officer, is my husband going to go to prison? Is he going to be locked away for years and years? What's going to happen to him? He's my husband, the father of our children. How are we going to cope if he's locked away for years and years? This is completely insane. Isn't this manslaughter? You could go down for a long time for manslaughter, if I'm not mistaken. I'm right, aren't I, officer? Ma'am, you've got this all very wrong. It would seem we have strong evidence to suggest the young woman killed tonight was running at your husband's truck. She was suicidal. She appears to have pulled the same stunt earlier on in the evening. But a man in a Bigfoot suit rescued her. But she attempted the stunt a while later, and this time her suicide attempt was successful. A man in a Bigfoot suit rescued her the first time? Do you realise how wacky you both sounding? How can you expect me to take a word you're saying seriously? Now you really are winding me up. No, it's true, sweetheart, I say. Where the hell did this happen? What sharp turn are you talking about? The officer told my wife where the accident happened, and she glared at me all the more. What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you drive there of all places in the middle of the night? You know how many people have lost their lives on that spot over the last 100 years? People have actually jumped off cliffs there to commit suicide. You choose to drive there in the middle of the night. I don't get it. I really don't. You are very, very odd. That's all I can say. I was just taking a pleasant drive in the middle of the night. Is there anything wrong with that? The views up there are excellent. I've heard enough. What is wrong with you, Marcus? Do you need your head examining? What the hell were you thinking? You're very strange. That's all I can say. Let's just say I was in the doghouse for a while with my wife, who was outraged for me slipping out in the middle of the night and driving in a precariously dangerous location. I couldn't blame her for being mad at me. I reflected over everything that had happened that curiously intriguing but very tragic night. The idiosyncratic Bigfoot I'd encountered that was unequivocally real. I don't know how Officer Bolatelli had assumed it to be a man in a Bigfoot costume. I don't think he could envisage that the real thing could be plausible. Yet despite 2 credible individual witnesses, he still refused to believe that the Bigfoot was real, even taking into account its gargantuan size. Bear in mind, I'd been close up and personal to the Bigfoot, and this was no costume. By all accounts, Officer Bolatelli's ludicrous response and rational reason was seasoned by his naturally sceptical mindset. Clearly he did not want to entertain anything that pierced his rigid perception of the world. All he could do was to say that you can do so much with costumes these days. There are some people who refuse to listen to what they don't want to hear. In the end, both of us witnesses let him believe what he wanted to believe. It was so much easier that way. I thought about the Bigfoot I'd encountered an awful lot after this incident. In fact, he consumed my thoughts so much that even thoughts of ending my life seemed to have dissipated. I was astonished how the creature had spoken to me. He had known that that young woman was trying to take her life, as much as he had known that I was trying to take mine. How could he even know that? I decided the creature had to have some superhuman powers in telepathic awareness and psychic insight. That was the only explanation. It would seem, based on the first witness's account, the Bigfoot had spoken to the young girl, as he had spoken to me. It would seem he told her that life was a gift, and one would do well to remember that, just like he had told me. It was rather extraordinary and incredibly remarkable. I had been warned of the traumatic after-effects I would likely receive in the aftermath of the tragedy, and indeed, true to form, I was experiencing hauntingly graphic, rather torturing nightmares
of the young woman's last moments, which kept tormenting me. I would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. Let's just say nothing prepares you for the shock when you feel that bump, hear the crash, see blood spattering across your windscreen. It's like a nightmare from the most dark movie. Ostensibly, even when I rushed over to the girl's body, sprawled in a mangled heap on the road, I knew she was dead. It was all too late. I'll never forget the sorrowful look on the Bigfoot's deep dark eyes, with its yellow eyeshine, as he stared at me, with a sombre, aggrieved expression on his face. I realized that even though me and the young woman had never ever crossed paths, on the very same day, at the very same time, we were both looking to end our lives. I wondered about her story. Of course, I'd gone to the police station, as you do in these fortuitous events, to file a report, and of course to answer questions.
"Hello, Mr. Fielding. It's very good to see you,"
said Officer Bolatelli.
"How are you feeling today?"
He pauses for a brief moment.
"Sorry, that wasn't a very appropriate question to ask you, under the circumstances."
"I'm as well as can be expected, sir. Still in shock," I tell him.
"Of course you are," says the officer, leading me into the interview room. "Take a seat, Mr. Fiorentini. Would you like some coffee? Or can I get you a soda or something? I do believe we've even got some donuts on the go if you're interested." "A coffee will be great," I say.
The officer hands me coffee in one of those plastic cups. I take a large gulp, almost gagging from the taste. It's so strong. Perhaps they like it like this in the force, to get their engines firing on all cylinders at some of the ungodly hours they may sometimes be required to work.
"You'll be very glad to know, Mr. Fielding, that the young woman in question left a suicide note in her sock drawer with yesterday's date on it, telling her mother where her body would be found, how she was going to kill herself. It seems she didn't want the driver who mowed her down to get into any kind of trouble on her account, which was a jolly decent thing for her to do. People aren't always that graciously considerate when it comes to suicides, but she has made our lives a whole lot easier for all concerned, with the exception of those that are left behind, of course." "She actually left a note?" I ask. "Yes, she did leave a note. It's a pity, I say, that the man in the Bigfoot suit, whoever he was, didn't drag her off to get some real help at a psychiatric hospital. Then none of this may have happened. It seemed he disappeared off the face of the planet and failed to file a report. Maybe he was worried about what people would think about him, loitering around the place in a Bigfoot suit. I suppose it's not a very good look, if you think about it. I gather she tried this before. To kill herself, I mean. I don't know the details in particular. The mother claims her daughter was a very troubled, sensitive soul that found the world a hard place. She wanted out. The coroner is satisfied that this is a suicide, so you can have your truck back. But we've arranged for it to be cleaned and repaired for you. Your insurance is paying for the damage. We've sorted all that out for you. After you gave us your details, of course. Let's just say, given how traumatizing this experience must be for you, I always like to help wherever I can. That's our job on the force, to create calm in the storm, peace and safety to the community. Now I do have a favour to ask you, Mr. Fielding. I assure you that you are not obliged to honour my favour, but I would be exceedingly pleased if you would. I'd be happy, sir, to help where I can. It would seem the deceased girl's mother would like very much to meet you personally. She wants to know about her daughter's last moments. We don't normally go down this track, but the poor mother is insistent that talking to you will help her a lot. The poor woman is inconsolable with grief. What could I possibly say to her that could possibly make her feel better? I hardly think my words will bring her much comfort. You'll be surprised what you can do to help that poor woman. You'll be able to assure her firsthand that her daughter didn't suffer, that it was over for her in a second. I'm sure she wants to hear it from the horse's mouth, not just hearsay, if you get my drift. I could do that, but I still doubt I can be much of a comfort to her. I mean, what do I say to the woman whose daughter I ran over? You'll be surprised. Very surprised. I think you will help her. And I think you should.
What? Said my wife when I returned home. You said the dead girl's mother would come here to talk about her daughter's last moments with you? Are you kidding me? And you agreed to this? You know how insane this sounds. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but some of the nonsensical things you're doing lately are very, very odd, and at the very least questionable.
It might be insane, Crystal, but if I can help this woman in her grief, I will do all I can. In helping her, it might actually help me. And it's the least I can do in the circumstances. You know, people, when they're grieving, they're not always rational. Sometimes it's the strangest, most bizarre things that might bring them comfort. Officer Balotelli believes if I tell the grieving mother that her daughter did not suffer, that it'll bring her immeasurable relief. But she needs to hear it from me. Otherwise, it's just hearsay to her. It's not enough for her to hear it from the coroner. The coroner was not there. I was.
Good for you, honey. I hope you know what you're doing. I don't want you upsetting yourself. Me and the kids are out of here. We're going to spend the afternoon with your parents. I don't want them hanging around that grief-stricken woman. What happened to you has naturally affected all of us.
Good idea, I say.
I watch my wife with my 2 kids climbing into the car. My kids wave at me. Bye, Daddy. Good luck. Hope everything goes all well. With that woman, I mean. I hope she isn't cross with you, Daddy. You must tell her it's not your fault, says Jake. In that moment, I almost feel ashamed that a couple of days ago, I intended to take my own life. It hits me like a brick to the head. Inadvertently, this young girl who committed suicide saved my life. I was still here, was I not? My plans to go through with my suicide mission had been halted and stalled when the young woman had stopped me by forcing me to slow down, which meant my truck didn't have the opportunity to go crashing over the sheer drop. And after the accident, I couldn't go through with it. I waited with bated breath for my visitor to arrive. I'm told her name is Felicity McGavin. Before long, I hear a truck purring down the long asphalt drive that leads directly to our double-storey home. I glance out of the large French windows in the kitchen area, with its prepossessing views that overlook the front yard, the pristine hedges, the mowed lawn, the red brick paving, the large gnarled oak tree that is casting its shaded shadows across the paving on this scorcher of a day. Very hot for Washington, I might add. I watch as a woman climbs out of her truck, closing the door behind her, her face glancing hesitantly towards my house. But despite her obvious reservations, I observe a sturdy determination written in her expression, a little like when you don't want to go to the dentist, but you bite your upper lip and go, because you know your teeth need attention. I recognize the face. It is the spitting image of the young woman I ran over, a slightly older version of her. It sends a chill running down my spine, as haunting images of that graphic, horrifying moment of impact come racing back into my mind. For a moment I come close to hyperventilating, but I quickly steady my nerves and compose myself as I hear the knock at my door. I draw in a deep breath. My heart is pounding, but I get to the door and I open it. The woman is standing in the doorway. She has a pixie face just like her daughter's and a similar pair of earnest blue eyes. She is wearing makeup to cover up the telltale pink splotches on her skin that would reveal how much she's been crying. Try as she might, she can do little to disguise her melancholia. She looks like a woman who has suffered a grievous loss and is not disguising it terribly well. Despite her very best efforts, I can see her eyes are red, and her mascara is smudged from sorrowful eyes that have failed to hold back their tears. The woman is wearing a striking green dress. It's emerald in colour, trailing down to above her ankles. It's made of an ethereal material that is almost floating and very cool. I wonder why she looks so elegant, as if she's going to a cocktail party, but I give the matter no further thought. Mr. Fielding?
That's right, I say, shaking her hand cordially. You must be Felicity McGovern.
That's me, she says, giving me a watery smile.
Come in, I say, guiding her into my kitchen and offering her a seat around the breakfast nook area.
She sits down thankfully. It's awfully good of you to see me. I'm so grateful. Others might not have been quite so kind. I know it can't be easy for you.
It's only a pleasure, Mrs. McGovern. Anything I can do to help, it's a pleasure.
Call me Felicity.
Well, Felicity, I can only hope I can offer you some comfort, but all I can say is I'm not sure that I actually can.
Oh, believe me, Mr. Fielding, just seeing me is offering me great comfort. I was so worried you were going to turn me down. I wouldn't have blamed you if you had. I know it can't be easy for you, having my daughter flinging herself at your truck, or having to witness that grisly scene firsthand. I can only apologise for my daughter, afflicting that horror on you. If she was here, I'm sure she'd do the same. Apologise, I mean. The last thing she'd have ever wanted to was to cause you distress.
Call me Marcus, I say. First of all, I'd like to...
Don't say it. Please don't say it. You really don't need to. It's not necessary.
But I do. I'm very sorry about your daughter's demise. I really am. I wish you were visiting me under better circumstances. I really do.
Under different circumstances, it's very unlikely we would have ever met, or even crossed paths. Funny how bizarre situations in life can bring people together like this. Did she suffer? My daughter, I mean. Did she cry out? Did she look anguished when you saw her? I pause for a moment. I decide I'm going to tell this woman everything I know. She deserves the truth. Besides, I know I can trust her.
Well, I was driving on that road in the middle of the night. It was tenebrous. Your daughter just ran towards my truck. It was like she wanted to be run over. It was peculiarly bizarre, I thought. Everything happened so quickly. I was trying desperately to stop in time, but I was going faster than I ought. I was revving up my engine, you see. But even if I had been going slower, your daughter would still have been run over. She was dead set on being mown down. I remember she looked so apologetic for a brief moment when she caught my eye, as if she was saying sorry. I don't mean to do this to you.
That's my daughter for you. That's why she left a suicide note. She wanted to make certain whoever ran her over was not incriminated from her death by being falsely accused of reckless driving or something. I found her suicide note in her sock drawer. I mean, what is she like? This isn't the first time she attempted suicide. I suppose deep down in my heart, I knew she'd try again. I knew she wouldn't give up.
So I gather. The officer was telling me so.
The main question I need to ask you is, did she suffer?
I don't think so, ma'am. It was over so quick for her. I doubt she felt a single thing.
Good. That's what the coroner told me. But you know, that's the coroner. I mean, am I supposed to really believe her? That's why I had to ask you. You were the one that was driving there in that treacherous spot in the middle of the night. But why were you? Or am I interfering? Tell me to mind my own business, if I am.
I was trying to end my life, Felicity. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but inadvertently your daughter stopped me from going over the edge. I was forced to slow down because of her.
Mrs. McGovern looks at me nonplussed. You thought you couldn't give me comfort. The fact that you're still here now, as a result of my daughter, brings me great comfort. You know how thrilled she would be to know that in her death, she actually saved a life? I mean, what are the chances of that happening? Why were you trying to kill yourself? What was so bad you wanted to end it all? I need to know. I hope I'm not being presumptuous to ask you, but you've been so forthcoming to me. I don't believe many people would care to admit what you've just told me. Your honesty, it's very refreshing and very much appreciated, especially for a woman like myself that is stumbling around in the darkness, trying to make sense of everything. It's like trying to put all the pieces together of a very warped jigsaw puzzle, and some of the pieces just don't fit. I sigh. Very well, I will tell you. Why did I want to end it all? Good question. I don't pretend to know all the answers to it. Life, really, I suppose. The unfairness of it all. It grieves my heart greatly when I see how many people have it so good. Others have it so bad. It seems so morally wrong, so reprehensible to me. I see this in the lives of my very own children, you know. One who sails through life, the other who struggles with everything he does. Then there's my wife.
My very best friend Crystal, who I betrayed one night after a drunken binge and woke up in another woman's bed. And every time I look at my wife, I am racked with guilt. It is very difficult to live with myself. I know my family would be a lot better off without me. That's the truth. I think over the last few months, I reached rock bottom. I never knew it was possible to feel so desolate, so isolated, so alone, so unbelievably hopeless, so filled with despair.
Oh, believe me, your family won't be better without you, Mr. Fielding. I can promise you that. Look at me. Do you think I'm better off without my daughter? Absolutely not. You know, you're just like my daughter. You're a sensitive soul. Sometimes it's the souls like yours that find life too hard to stomach. You're a good man who made a mistake, and you can't forgive yourself for that mistake. It's eating you alive. I don't know if you've seen ants eating an insect, ravaging it to pieces. Carpenter ants, I believe they're called. They can be so vicious, so callous. But that's what you're doing to yourself. You're eating yourself alive with your guilt. No wonder you're so miserable. No wonder your life has lost its sparkle and lacks meaning. I see that you're a man of remarkable integrity, which is a rare quality these days to find in people. If I was giving you any advice, I would beg you to seek some help. People are often afraid to ask for help, but your desire to kill yourself is not normal. My daughter was like you. She found life preposterously unfair. She hated that with a passion. It caused her to sink into a very deep depression. She felt she could never right the wrongs in this world. I told her it was enough to make a small difference in this life, and she could play her part in making the world a better place. But she didn't see it that way. She said life was a struggle, and she couldn't face it a moment longer. She was diagnosed with depression, but despite medication, she remained so unhappy. It was all too much for her to bear. The very nice officer, what's his name?
You mean Officer Balotelli?
That's right, that's his name, Officer Balotelli. Very considerate man. He was generous in giving me all the details. Some police officers would not have been so magnanimous with the truth, but he was brilliant. I gather my daughter had tried to get herself run over twice in one evening. The first time she wasn't so lucky. I gather Officer Balotelli claims a man in a Bigfoot suit rescued my daughter the first time. She lowers her voice to a whisper. I didn't correct him about that, but let's just say that was no man in a Bigfoot suit. That was the real deal.
Oh, I know that was a Bigfoot, Felicity, because I saw him myself, hovering over your daughter's body. He was completely devastated she was gone.
Fancy that, Mr. Fielding. You see, Mr. Daw, the world is a beautiful place when an unlikely creature like that belongs to the pages of pulp fiction serendipitously comes to your rescue. My daughter admitted to me that she'd tried to throw herself on that very same road 3 months earlier. She confessed to me that a very irritating Bigfoot kept dragging her away from the danger, telling her over and over again, in her head, that she didn't have a right to take her life, that it was a gift of God. She described the creature as beautiful, a kindly soul. Of course, I got my daughter help, but despite everything, she clandestinely slipped out of the house in the middle of the night and stubbornly went back to the same stretch of road, hoping that this time she'd get to meet her maker, and hoping that this time she wouldn't get to see that Bigfoot again. If you can do anything for me, Mr. Torrentino, before you decide to kill yourself, please engage in some counselling sessions first. Visit your doctor for meds, but don't go killing yourself. Our world is crying out for sensitive souls like yourself that make it a much better place. To cut a long story short, I took Felicity McGovern's advice, along with the Bigfoots, and let's just say I'm very grateful to the young woman who ran across my path that night. For although she died, she enabled another person to live. That person is me. I have now overcome my depression, and me and my wife and family have never been happier. I have found my healing. That Bigfoot was absolutely right. Our lives are a precious gift. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.